Female cyclists who raced in this week's USA Cycling National Championships say they were blindsided when they were forced to compete against a transgender athlete who ended up taking first place. Our next guest says that she had no idea she would be competing against a trans athlete by the name of Kate or KJ Phillips in this race, and believes that Phillips' presence in this race was hidden from the competitors before the race.
Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So we have female cyclists protesting having to compete against a male. Protesting a male athlete winning yet again another competition in a women's category. In an event organised by USA Cycling, a male athlete won an event on Tuesday, and the female opponents are now speaking out. The trans athlete, Kate Phillips, won first place at the Lyons Masters National Championships in Wisconsin. Phillips beat veteran women's cyclist Julie Peterson for the gold, and Peterson then refused to take the podium at the medal ceremony in protest. Good on her for refusing to take the podium, for protesting, but it's very disheartening to hear that this is still going on, especially when it comes to an event organised by USA Cycling. So this is a national sporting body, and we know that nationally changes are being made, especially in light of Trump's executive order. I mean, this is going on with the private sporting bodies, especially with cycling. But it's particularly disheartening to see this going on with an event organised by a national sporting body. She said you could clearly see the power that he had. I mean, even seeing this person on the podium is pretty ridiculous. You can see the contrast between the male and the females. That is very obvious. People are going to look at this and tell us that this is perfectly fair, that this is inclusion, this is progressive. And a common theme that we're seeing when it comes to women having to compete against men is these sporting bodies don't even give the women the courtesy of letting them know. They show up to these events after putting a lot of time into training, after putting a lot of money into preparing for these events and attending these events and paying all these fees, buying all this equipment. After all of that, they show up and they're told that they're competing against a man. You can imagine it's very hard for them to turn around and then walk away, throwing all that effort down the drain. So they're blindsided and they're backed into a corner. And of course, many of them feel they have no choice but to go along with it and just do their best, do the best they can do. But then we see some female athletes, at least they will say, okay, I'm not going to stand on the podium next to this person, or I'm going to speak out about it. And that's what these female athletes are doing, and I commend them for that. But I'm so sick of hearing the lack of courtesy for these women, the lack of respect for these women. And I believe it's deliberate. They keep it quiet so that the women show up in the first place. If they had told them weeks ago that this event is going to have a transgender athlete, perhaps they wouldn't have even bothered entering into the competition. But they need people to enter into these competitions. They need the numbers. They need people to show up. So they keep it quiet. Very sneaky move indeed. And these sporting bodies need to be held accountable. She said, if I had known, I wouldn't have spent thousands of dollars to travel and time off work to come and do a race. Wow. That's exactly what I was saying there. And these sporting bodies know that. They know it. So they lure them to the event, essentially, under false pretenses. And then they flip the script on them. And many of them can't just back out like that. Sponsors, people who have traveled to come and cheer them on. They've had people, investing in them, being there. So they can't just turn around and just throw it all away and say, well, now that I know that there's a man in the race, I'm going to just walk away. That would be a very difficult position to be in indeed. I said, I don't want to race against a man. And they quickly scolded me and said, oh, you can't call him a man. And I'm like, well, he is a man. So I was quickly scolded and corrected that it is a woman. And I don't even know what to say. What do you say to that level of delusion?
And I have, in my last 10 years of racing bikes, been forced to race biological males. I've been forced to be on the podium with many of them in the last history. More recently, as it's come the last 5 years, they've definitely been in in Oregon, every almost weekend, there's a biological male in our races. Every weekend, practically, there's a race.
All people have value. You don't even need to say that. But when the rules were such that there was nothing in place, I competed and never, I just competed. It was the rules. I'm a rules person. The problem I have here is there's been some transparency that I didn't know. I was under the understanding that they had decided that this is now a fact that is not fair to women to compete against a biological male. So I totally did not expect this, to drive 13 hours to come and do a national championship. And I've won 27 times, and I still love to do it. And I had no idea. I'd like to have known that that's what the terms were if I came, but that wasn't even made known to me.
So the lengths that these sporting bodies would go to cover up the fact that they're allowing men to compete in women's categories is pretty clear. It's pretty evident. And of course, these athletes, these transgender athletes, adopt these feminine names, Kate, Lucy, or whatever. So looking at the list, you're not really going to know. Unless this person has a history and that name's become, prominent in the cycling scene. Women looking at that list are not even going to know. And of course, these transgender athletes in cycling in particular, they have a history of competing in the men's category. They just literally have crossed over into the women's, and everybody's supposed to act as if that's perfectly fair. Who's going to compensate these women? All that money and time and effort they spent preparing for these events, only to realize that they've switched the terms on them, only to realize that they were actually misled. And then on top of that, they get to watch a man stand first place on the podium. They get to watch a man being acknowledged as the winner, when really that person should not be in that category to begin with.
Cyclist Debbie Milne joins us now. Good morning to you, Debbie.
Good morning.
Good morning. So you drove, 400 miles from Greenville, South Carolina to Wisconsin to participate. You spent hundreds of dollars to go to this. And you looked up all of the people you were competing against, at least the top ones, just to find out what your chances were and decided to go. So what happened?
Well, yes, I did just that. All of the athletes were look up the list of registrations, and then we can understand who's participating, look up their strengths and weaknesses. And Catherine Phillips, KJ, name was not on that list, and I checked it up all the way to the point of closure when we couldn't register online anymore. And they said there would be no more registrations allowed after that. So it was hidden from us. The other athletes like Julie, my friend who placed second, agreed that they did not see Catherine Phillips' name. So basically we came to compete. We found out after the race, that's when we found out that there had been another competitor we thought just added. But Julie spoke with one of the officials who confirmed that Catherine Phillips had been registered since, I want to say, June 16th.
And they just didn't put Catherine's name?
Absolutely disgusting. If they believed what they were doing was so noble, they wouldn't be so sneaky to hide this person's name. Even to the very last minute, they hid this person's name. Some of them don't even know that they competed against a male athlete until after the fact. Now, if women were actually given a heads up and informed that such and such is transgender, this opponent just happens to be transgender, I don't believe many would show up at all, especially after seeing the damage that has been done to women's sports by allowing this in the first place. I don't believe many of them would show up, and these sporting bodies know it. It would be a lot easier if the women just didn't enter into the event in the first place. The young lady who protested the transgender fencer, where she took the knee, she said that she just doesn't enter into events. That was not the first time she refused to compete against a male athlete. But unfortunately, for that particular event, I don't believe she was aware that this person was transgender. So that's the only reason why she showed up. And she still went ahead and refused. Good on her. And they've now changed their policy. Her actions led to a change in policy by USA Fencing. But they don't want that. They don't even want women to be given the option of exercising their free speech and refusing to compete. They don't want that attention, that negative attention that makes them, the sporting body and the officials, look like absolute fools.
On the roster?
Yes, my friend Julie actually had a visual on the computer screen that indicated and confirmed those dates. Yes.
So what was their reason for that? If they closed the date from signing up, all of the names should be listed. Why wasn't KJ's listed?
I can't answer to that.
We know
I
why.
think if the argument that all things are fair or equal, I don't understand, because if I don't agree that it's fair, to raise a biological male, which now the UCI, or international or world governing body of cycling, governing body for the sport of cycling, had confirmed that it is not fair, but USA Cycling monitors or governs our female, everything that is an elite, 17 to 18 or U23, they govern all the other female national championships, and they have not come in line with this new evidence and this new decision by our world governing body. But I've learned since then, there is a policy, and I don't know if the policy includes hiding the names, but that has not been made. There's not been transparency there. I could have not been wrong.
Debbie, I know that your friend Julie Peterson, she came in second, and you did talk to her after the race. She chose to boycott the podium. Tell us about that conversation with her.
Well, it was difficult. She's a class athlete. We respect our sport. I love my sport. I love USA Cycling. I've been racing for 25 years. She's about the same for her. And we respect podiums. It's really tough to do something that significant. It's disrespect. It would be, let's say, it's to honor our participants.
So Julie is the rightful winner, and she didn't show up to the podium because that was her title stolen from her. That was her win stolen from her. So good on Julie for not showing up to take the podium, to stand next to this person. Good on her.
So I think in that regard, she felt that there had not been transparency, that we were given the choice to either compete or not. And because of that, she said, in this case, in the only case, and I said, this, if I was in second, I would have boycotted with her, and I never do things like that. But just because of the deception that was involved in us not having a choice to come or not, under those conditions,
So the world governing body, we know that they have said that it's unfair, and they have banned transgender athletes from competing in the women's category on an international level. And they even introduced a third category, an open category. But nationally, here in the USA Cycling is still allowing this insanity to continue. And now they're adopting all these measures to take away options for these women. They don't even get to choose if they want to commit to these events in the first place, with the full knowledge that there's going to be a transgender athlete competing against them. USA Cycling transgender eligibility policy allows for biological males to compete in the women's category under certain conditions. They need to provide a written and signed declaration to the USA Cycling technical director using the Elite Athlete Fairness application form that their gender identity is female. Okay, now I guess that makes them a woman. They need to satisfy the Elite Athlete Fairness evaluation process in section 9 below. If the athlete A is a Group A athlete, or B desires to compete in a championship race at a national championship. Okay, so they're basically required to fill out some paperwork in order to compete. That is it. There's not even any requirement for them to suppress their testosterone in any capacity. Several other Team USA national governing bodies have come under scrutiny for their transgender eligibility policies over the last year. USA Gymnastics, we know they've recently changed their policy after the embarrassment of the Simone Biles situation and it highlighting that they allow men to compete in the women's category. USA Fencing announced in April that it is preparing to change its gender eligibility policy after a viral protest by women's fencer Stephanie Turner sparked mass backlash and federal intervention by protesting a trans opponent. And I'm really hoping that these wonderful female cyclists speaking out now will embarrass USA Cycling enough for them to rethink their policy. They should be shamed into changing their policy as a matter of urgency. So let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. Like, comment and subscribe. Take care of yourselves, and God willing, I will see you in the next video.